Hello and welcome to NOV Live. I'm Michael Gaines and glad you are joining us today as we continue our series of conversations with experts from within our organization and around the industry to bring you insights and conversation about the energy industry and the people helping shape this part of our world. So we are going to have a great conversation today. We have a special guest today, NOV's Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Technology Officer. So should be some really good insights and conversation. So glad you're joining us today. Before we jump in, we are going to go ahead and bring in Shelby DeMaine to talk about how you can put your questions in for our guest today. So Shelby, hey, good to see you today.
Hey, Michael, it's great to see you as well. So yeah, we have a really exciting show today. I think we have a great guest coming up who we'll love to hear from. But before that, if you wanted to ask our guests any questions or had any questions throughout the show, you can ask those by commenting down below. So it's the easiest way, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I'm in the comment section throughout the entire show, gathering up all of your questions, and we're going to get to as many as we can at the end of the show. So go ahead and comment them, and I promise we're taking a look. And then if after the show, if you have an idea for a future episode or another question that you'd like to get answered, there's a couple different ways you could reach us. The first is you can go ahead and shoot us an email. So that email address is socialmedia@nov.com. You can just shoot us a quick message there and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. And then if you'd like to reach out to us via phone, you can do that as well. So you can call us, leave a voicemail. I've said this before, but I love this because you can stay anonymous, or you can let us know your name and maybe where you work, and we can shout you out on a future episode. But that number is also on the screen, and it is country code +1 346 223 4799. So you can reach us there, and we would definitely love to hear from you. But like I said, in the meantime, for the show today, go ahead and comment down below, and we're gonna get to as many of those questions as possible. So speaking of y'all asking us questions, that leads us right into the next part of the show where we ask you a question. So it is now time for Rig Geeks.
Rig Geeks, Post of the Week.
All right, so this first one, so NOV, we got our roots way back in about 1862 with the oil well supply company. And so this week we're asking you, can you name the founder of the oil well supply company where NOV got some of our roots from? And bonus points if you can name the state within the US where it was founded. So can you name the founder? And like I said, bonus points, you can also name the state of America in which it was founded.
All right. So it sounds like a little, not only trivia, but a little geography trivia.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fun. Cool.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks, Shelby. And so we are looking forward to having a great conversation today. One of the fun parts I like is to know where everyone is watching us from. So feel free to put in your country or even your local city and country where you're watching us from. We like to see those in the comments as well. So we are going to be bringing in our guest today. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, we have the opportunity to have a conversation with NOV's Chief Technology Officer and Chief Marketing Officer, David Reid. Hey, David, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Michael, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure people put in their countries because I know that, I've only been to a handful of countries, but I think you have all these coffee cups. I think you collect those whenever you travel places. So you have a collector of Java memorabilia, which is
got a Starbucks collection that spans my career. So it's an illness over time. I think everyone I work with has the same illness. Who was having to go to countries. I wasn't exactly trying to go to countries, but it wasn't my desire. But as you went, you wanted to have something to remember.
Yeah.
So I picked up. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll see some pictures of those one day pop up on Instagram. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. Well, I know that really appreciate you taking the time today. So of course, it's been several months since you took on the role of kind of a dual role, both chief marketing officer and chief technology officer. And so maybe first off, just for those that might not be aware, I mean, what does that entail? Because it sounds like a lot of responsibility, a lot of teams, a lot. But what all kind of are you looking at as you sort of take on those dual responsibilities?
Well, I think if you were to describe me over time, it's probably the right job. Both of those, technology and marketing, have been in my DNA from the beginning. So it covers a lot, but at the same time, we have great teams. And so when you're heading up subjects like marketing and technology, you're just inheriting more great teams. And so we have some different technologies that we look at. And from a corporate standpoint, I actually get to pull in all of our business units and all of our segments to collaborate. And that's probably the best part of the technology side, is not just trying to invent new things and work out where we're going and what should we be doing, which I like doing, but also seeing what we've got. I mean, this company is, it's no secret that we've acquired a lot of companies over years. And what comes with that is lots of technology. There's always a corner where you can find something new and say, oh my goodness, we do that. This would fit perfectly here, and collaborating. And so there's a lot of that goes on in the finding out what we've got. And then there's the looking at where we should go, which really fits in with marketing. And probably in my marketing genes, I did a lot of product line in the company and a lot of looking at products and where they should go. And marketing isn't really just the packaging of NOV and its products. It's looking at where should we be. And so I've done that over years, looked at what's the next thing we should be doing. And for me, the two jobs fit really well together. I mean, I will say cycle-wise, you go up and down in our industry. Right. Sometimes, I mean, we stayed up long. There was a 10-year good market, and we've gone into a down market, and it's going long. Mm-hmm. And so that's a bit different from my early years, but you always know there's a counter cycle to plan for. And usually in the down cycle, we're planning up, and usually in the up cycle, despite the behavior of the company, I'm trying to think, what do we do when we go down?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the kind of the technology side of sort of how you see things and what you're excited about. So I want to talk about that in just a little bit. Actually, on the front end, though, I'd like to talk about another part of kind of your world and your work that you regularly talk about, and that's kind of the really kind of the leadership or employee development side, and really in terms of what it takes to be a good manager and really to manage a team. I know you talk about that a lot, and I'm really specifically kind of interested to talk about it in the confines of when you have a challenging market. If there are folks who maybe have to manage a team or are part of a team, how do you look at approaching your work or approaching your team when sometimes it can be a little bit challenging? I mean, maybe in some cases that's an understatement. How do you do that? Because I know you've experienced, like you said, those ups and downs in many cycles.
Yeah, many. In fact, I came in a down cycle in a repair shop in Scotland, and it was an odd choice, but it put me in a situation of learning in the hard times. And it sounds strange because I enjoy all cycles, but the down cycle gets this extreme focus. Where people are stuck with two choices, right? So all of the employees, you get people you care for a lot who we can't afford to keep, and that's a terrible feeling. And so it's easy for people to actually roll into the negative. In fact, I would say in all leadership and managing, people roll to negative easily. It's a trait of humans. People generally can tell you what's wrong. We all have that gift, and some people think it's a special gift. It's not. Knowing what's wrong is pretty common. Everyone can tell you this is what's not working. So the challenge for leadership and teams and management is to be able to get people to point towards something. Where are we going? How do we see positive in the middle of this? How do we frame it? And that doesn't mean pretending everything's okay when it's not. It means really letting yourself feel the pain of the situation, but moving people on. And having a positive mindset is, I just had this conversation with one of my peers over at the other building. We were talking about people, and that challenge is to get what you say and lead people to a more positive thought. And amazing things happen when you do that, and you do it right in a downturn. It is the story that you tell later. Nobody tells the story of, we had 10 years where it was amazing. Well, some people tell those stories, but generally it's not an interesting story. It's kind of a boasty story, and everyone's like, oh, okay, great, you did amazing. It's boring. But the story of, we made it through, we were desperate, things were really hard, and then we came up with this idea, and we stuck with it, and we grew this amazing business. Well, that is the story. So it's a mindset thing. It's a almost personal discipline that you need to learn of, how do I get people to, you have to be credible. You have to talk about what's really happening. You have to talk about pain, but you can't live there. And that's a human tendency to want to lean towards the negative. So I think it sounds glib and like just motivational speaking stuff. It's not that. It's how you live your life. It's dealing with pain well and having vision for where you're taking people. And when you have a vision to go somewhere, people get excited, they work hard, and they do amazing things. I'm forever impressed with human beings and their ability to create something from nothing. It's just I really enjoy it.
So part of your background, like you said, is in the product line space. I think there's some architecture experience there, and so I think I think I've heard you before talk about some of the parallels between spaces, and kind of the idea of moving through those. Can you talk about that? Because that's kind of stuck with me.
I think anyone who's had any kind of management or leadership training from me probably has this little book that I give out, 101 Things I Learned in Architecture. And at first everyone looks at it and goes, this is about designing things. And one of the nice things architecturally, which is where I started and studied, is learning the principles of architecture, because they're really helpful. Architects are always in danger of making a building that they want to make. Expressing themselves is the worst thing that could happen, because they're not building something for themselves, they're building it for others. And so they train them to think differently so that their buildings can be successful, rather than some great expression or vision that they had. Their vision has to incorporate the environment. And so they're taught to think about the environment and how people behave in it. Well, one of those principles is thinking about space. And there are two kinds of space. There are enclosed spaces and there are open spaces. And they describe them as positive. So when you're in an enclosed space, it's a positive space. And when it's open, it's a negative space. And what they say, the kind of general teaching, is that people will stay in positive spaces and they will move through negative spaces. And so if you have a courtyard, people will walk through the courtyard. They'll tend not to stay there. They might visit, but they won't stay unless it's a closed space. And then human beings tend to stay in positive spaces. Well, that principle of we move through negative and we stay in positive is the principle to be thinking of. So it helps people to understand that when negative things happen, like in your life, losing a loved one who's close to you can be devastating. And we all know people, we might be that person who has lost someone in our life and we can't let it go. And you've seen them and they live as if they're living in the death of the person. And they carry this heaviness and they struggle to move on in life. And that's not how the person you lost would want you to live your life. They want you to enjoy and experience it. It's a very precious thing, our lives. And so you have to learn to really enjoy it. So you have to push through that pain. So that example is, when you go to a funeral, you want to mourn. You want to go through the pain. You want to feel it. You want to let all those emotions rise up and then move on and not live in that place, because that's healthy. You want to move through negative. You want to recognize it. But then you want to live in positive. So you always end up, though, things are hard. We're going through this dark valley. But out here, there's this future. There's this light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what we're aiming towards. And humans do so much better when you explain things in those terms, and people start that practice of recognize the darkness, recognize the hardship, go through it, feel it, and then take us somewhere. So having vision, having rough vision. Some people think they have to have these perfect visions, and the truth is they never play out exactly the way you want. But having an ability to adjust, but say we're going this way, to get up and move instead of being stuck is a really important management and leadership thing. Is to keep finding ways to rally people and to do what humans do best. The inventions that we've come up with, the things that we've done. You want that spirit. You want that fighting for the good of each other. And in fact, the one that when I started, I really loved technology. We had these tall robots. I think we'd only built a couple of them at the time, and I was so like, it was the first thing my eyes were drawn to. Look at these 100-foot robots, and I got really excited about technology, and I got into it. I got wrapped in it, and the management at the time was saying, "Yeah, this is good. We love technology, but we really care about people." And I'd be like, yeah, but technology, because my desire was, I just thought that was so interesting. And then I learned that it's the people that make the technology. If you don't look after people, if you don't understand that's the engine, if you can look after the engine, it will produce amazing results. I've really learned that over, 28 years in the company, and I must say that foundation that was set early to think about where can you go and what can we do. And so I was in a dark time, but they still talked about caring for people. We do this for our people, we do it for each other, and we grow each other. And that changed everything for me in my career. Made a lot of fun.
So one of the items that you talked about, or that you mentioned, you talked about setting a vision and really talking about the future. And I know that's another major part of your job. So as you look at things that you're excited about, or things that you're looking ahead to, I know that there are folks that are watching today that very much enjoy and kind of the same thing, really looking to the future, or looking to understanding those things. So what are some of the things that are kind of top of mind for you? Especially again now, kind of having the dual role and an increased opportunity to help continue to drive toward that future. What are those things that are exciting for you today?
Well, the future is always easy, I think, because it hasn't happened. So
yeah, exactly.
Right now, it's okay. It's not verifiable for quite some time, so don't keep the tapes.
Yeah.
I had a really good boss who used to say this, like, think about your future, because it hasn't happened yet. So make it a good one, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I err to positive, that's because that's what I've learned. There's a lot of buzzword stuff going on that is really like, I try not to go there because everyone ends up in these ruts of subjects. But there are trends that are very exciting, and so there are things I'm seeing just in the collaborative space. Data, man, everyone talks about data. Everyone's saying all the right things, but there's a lot of talk about where the future is and where we're going, and we tend not to talk about our future thoughts. So this is something I'm like, I don't know how much I want to say, but we try and talk about where we are. And so I'll give you a bit of some of the where we are that's interesting. We're kind of on the verge of, I think we've had Andy McKenzie on some of the shows here. He's up at our test rig, running with these auto manufacturing robots. It's really a trend for the downturn. It's a great trend. In the past, we've gone and made our own robots, but Andy's kind of observation was, well, these guys are making hundreds of robots. Can't we just use them? And you're like, good idea, Andy. So now taking pretty low cost, high volume robots and saying, is it possible in our future to imagine the place where there's the most danger on the rig floor, not just mechanical danger, but the potential for, explosion and all sorts of horrible things. Is it possible to imagine a future where we're not there? We would have said for years, even the pipe handling robots that I worked on for years, I thought, this is it. We're gonna see less people on the rig floor, and it'll be a safer place. I think the first time I ever spoke, someone came up to the microphone and said, "Yeah, I just had a piece of equipment drop next to me on a drilling rig off of your machine." Like, so thanks for your automation. But
yeah.
And I was stunned, first time in public, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's terrible." And I have to answer this right now. And of course, the answer was, well, people shouldn't be there. Well, that was the answer, but it isn't true, right? So the truth is people are working because these machines were doing the high repetition work, the heavy lifting. But there's tons of work around there that needs to happen that we haven't solved. And so what Andy's working on is that potential of saying, hey, what if at a pretty reasonable price, we could say the risk of a drill floor, not only wouldn't there be people working on it, but we have technology already that is in the field where we've set up a remote station and someone can run a drilling rig better than as if they were sitting on the drilling rig. So you're using high def cameras, much more data, but you're set the cameras up and you're remote and you're actually getting a better view of what's happening on the rig. That's exciting to me. I think it was maybe 2 days in that I called Andy and said, "Are we going where I think we're going?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's where we're going." And that's very exciting for me because the safety of people is like it's ingrained in us. And so I think everyone who's had a proper safety culture in your company, you don't want anyone, particularly as you move into management or leading or feeling responsible for anybody. Nobody should get hurt, and that's in the core. So it seemed like a fantastic dream, and there was a great company in Norway at one time came up with these custom-made robots, and you looked at them and that's the future. But my goodness, they're huge and expensive, and you're like, oh. Originally, they were an underwater rig, which seemed sound even more exciting. So here's a subsea. Wow. That was their first concept. So if you're going to learn to go manless, you're going to do it by going underwater. Then they learned, okay, that's hard. So let's take it to the surface. And it just was the mistake of custom design. So I like that. I like that trend. I think in all things, we need to learn to work with other industry. And we tend to invent for ourselves. I think this downturn is going to be really good for us. For less of that, I'm going to invent something, more of that. Where's the partnership? And probably that would be a second trend that I'm excited about is the learning to collaborate. I think that's a really interesting trend where people are learning from the data systems that I think. So lawyers have all gone to the same conference. And they've listened and they've said, whatever you do, protect your data because it's your business. And so they go, okay, build a big thick wall around our data. That's the thing. And so we got to have contracts. I was like, no, can't have my data. No, we're not sharing. No, well, you're setting yourself up for the more agile small companies to come in and go, we can solve this easily. I can connect everybody up. So one of the really cool things that I certainly knew was going on, I was involved in a lot of the early days, but getting closer to it and seeing where we've gone with data and sharing of information across systems. One of the pains of our life is that we buy companies. And so we're constantly looking at integration. But the benefit is, well, now we have the number one problem in data management, and that is the systems can't talk to each other. And so now what are we going to do? So the industry has built these huge groups of people who are all agreeing on new standards, which is kind of archaic, honestly. And so we've been able to go, well, is that the right approach, or do you need a translator in the middle? And so we've worked on this. I mean, we're in the process of launching a number of applications where we've found a way for all our dissimilar systems to talk to each other. And that was the beauty of what NOV had, was a ton of wildly independent people, which we love that in our culture. Is we don't really act like one big unit unless it makes sense for the business. And in this case, we a few years back gathered all the data people together, all the software people, and said, why don't we all be friends? And
that's a novel idea. Like, why don't we all come together, right?
They didn't like it. They didn't like it at first. The first meeting was awkward because I like inventing my own thing. I don't need my system to talk to your system, and I'm protecting my customers' data, and all of that was going on. Well, it wasn't but a few weeks of these meetings that everyone went, "Oh, this is really powerful. Why do we have multiple groups doing different things? Why don't the systems talk? Can we solve this?" And we've done that work for maybe 5 years now. We have various products you'll have seen on the market. They seem like different products, but they're actually the same in different parts. And so as we go across the whole supply chain inside of NOV, we've been hooking up and communicating between systems, and now we're starting to say, hey, I don't care whose system it is, we can connect because we've learned this way to translate. And so we become a major integrator, and it's just on the edge, just like the robotics, it's just on the edge of what we're doing. I say edge computing is a huge part of it, learning how to do data close to the source and not have to rely on cloud, but still work with cloud. But that is super exciting for NOV. Our position in oil and gas, and of course we've been moving. I think you've had shows on it into renewables.
We
already have industrial businesses that we don't talk a lot about, but I mean we're in food production. We're in all sorts of different things. Sewage systems. There's so many things that we do. We've been doing biogas for years. These are things that we've been doing. We do solar, water pumps, and the farms in Australia. We have things everywhere that we do. And you start to connect these and go, wait a minute, I've got this master data solution, and we're neutral. And we have MD Topco, which, for the oil field, half of the US has been feeding all the data into an MD Topco hub as a neutral player. And so you kind of go, well, NOV, you're not neutral. Well, we've been neutral for years. So it's really exciting what we can do with this kind of years of being a neutral data manager within Telco. So that's really, it doesn't stop exciting me. I just keep looking at more and more as more people connect in and start to use that. So it's a great time for NOV for that kind of stuff.
Well, it sounds like you're in the right role, and so kind of along
do you like? I don't know.
Right, and it keeps going. Yeah, no, it keeps going, and I think. But it's really good. So I'm looking, in some of the comments and really a lot of conversation happening. So if you're wanting to have a question for David, NOV's Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Technology Officer, go ahead and type your question in now as we're going to try to move into answering some of those questions. I know that we already have a couple lined up already, but yeah, if you've wanted to ask David a question and hadn't had the opportunity, we'd like to extend that to you now. And while you put in those questions, I know we already have a couple ready for David. So Shelby Dumaine is going to go ahead and come in and start get a little bit of rapid fire Q&A with David.
Absolutely. So this first one comes from Bill on Facebook, and he's wondering, David, what leadership lessons have you learned specifically by having staff work remotely?
Wow, that's a great question right now. I think I hear a lot of people talking in the same ways, so I don't know if I'm unique on this, but I think the world has changed, and that being at home, it's funny because we can get hyped up about how awesome that is or how good that is that we've learned flexibility. We can do. It used to be a question. Oh, I wonder if one day people could be more at home, and so people with traditional views sat and said, no, I need to walk around and see everybody. And if I don't see them working, they're not working. So I don't know if they could also be on Facebook when you weren't looking. But the people got really like, oh, no, I love to control people. And the world's changed. It's like we people are independent. You have to measure work differently. And I think we just had a wild test case that would have taken us 10 years of development if we'd have said, how do we get people to work more remotely? Why do we use offices? But I think that's changed. And so the big question now isn't, can people work from home, or how do we, some people are freaking out when I'm saying that because they're like, no, we're going to go back. Everyone go back to work. It's just the same. But for me, we've learned we're productive, certainly in our groups, and people are very productive. There is something missing. There's probably two aspects that are important. One is mental health, and I think it's not talked about enough, because people who have had issues at home or just in their selves have been working hard and coming to work and escaping probably difficult issues. And I don't think we're watching enough how well are people. A lot of people found they went home and worked more, and that's true. So my first lesson was, are we overworking? If I'm getting a lot of emails from an individual at 1 a.m, not a good thing, And so it's how's their work balance, how's their life balance. are they? I mean, I observed it in myself, overworking like crazy, like signing up for meetings all day long, and it's something I've learned over years is an illness in me that I am addicted to overwork. Like I will get all my value out of work, and I think this is a good time for people to really look at where are my spaces, where are your people's spaces, are they finding space, are they living healthily in this new norm? I think people will go back to work. We need human connection, especially those who are like loving it, the ultra introvert. I love it. Never need to see anyone again. In fact, I remember we did this in the team, and I said, okay, do we want to have like armbands of what am I comfortable doing? I'm comfortable hugging, or I'm comfortable just shaking hands, or don't come near my space because I'm not comfortable. And some of the introverts quickly wrote in, hey, I needed that before COVID. I don't want you to come near me. Leave me alone, So it's really interesting to people are needing as managers and leaders to be good at psychology, which they didn't really have to before. Just make sure people are generally happy. But knowing how well people are when they're isolated and knowing how much people need to interact, it's a new skill set. And then the leaders who will get the best people will be really good at that. And so yeah, that's one of the big lessons that I think has made a difference. And then the second part is the importance of human contact. People have had their cycles, so the extroverts are like cheering now. When I say that, because they're like they know it, but the people who are introverts don't know they need human contact, and the extroverts didn't know they needed space. They needed time to think and work out where they are and how are they doing. So I think both sides. So learning how we meet and when we meet, and we've certainly had some good conversations with that. That we need to go back. We need to be around each other. There were systems that were good, but the great thing is it's a conversation. I think in reviews, we started to say what thing will be hard for you when you go back to work, and that really is telling. So because like you will miss what about when you work from home, and that means okay, now let's adjust work so that we can get better and balance our lives out. So
it seems like the answer that we found isn't either or, but and.
Yeah, it's not simple.
Yeah, wow,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think Michael can attest to. I at the beginning of all this may have sent him a couple 1 a.m. Emails with show ideas and thoughts, and he gently reminded me that 8 hours of sleep is just as important. So I've learned.
So it's working because I care a lot about that. That's that's up on my list. The well-being of people is everything for producing great results.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we got this next question from Louis on LinkedIn, and we're not going to name names, Louis. I'm sorry for that. We won't be calling anybody out. But he was wondering that with all of the digital wave coming, how is NOV positioned in comparison to other, oil and gas services or equipment providers?
We're positioned really well. I kind of described that, but I think what will be critical for us is our ability to see people as not competitors. And that's going to be hard for everyone because we were all in a fight, and downturns are full of fighting for your space and your money to protect the people you care for in the company. But to think of ourselves as collaborators, we have parts of our business who are really good at it, and others who are struggling to in an old paradigm. So for the most part, I'm seeing enough movement in the right direction and investment. Honestly, I mean, we've got investment. My boss supports us. We have really difficult times, cutting like crazy. But these things, no, you better let that still run. And he's doing that, and I really appreciate that. So probably that's a leadership thing that we don't. I mean, someone said this the other day. We do a ton in various renewable areas. Someone said, "Why don't you tell the world?" I said, "Well, that's the problem. My boss has this thing with honesty, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people do. But we have to only talk about what we've done, not what we think we could do." And so, yeah, that's really been great for us in this setting. And he's been hanging out with people who, I mean, our NOV serves everybody, so there's not really a competitor. So it's easy for us because we'll supply to anyone that fits well. But I think collaboration is going to be the game, and I think we're pretty good at it. And open data systems is one of the best things that we've been good at. So I'm encouraged.
Yeah, definitely. So this next question, I'm going to warn you before I show it to you, David. It's a big one, and I don't need you to take out your crystal ball and tell us the exact future.
I want him to take out. I'm sure you have a crystal
I
ball
don't want
somewhere.
everyone to see the crystal ball. That's our secret. We don't use one of those as far as anybody knows.
Exactly. So Amant on LinkedIn was wondering, how long do you think oil will survive?
Oh, it's got a year left and it'll all be gone.
A year. Mark it on your calendar, right? So September 9th, the next year, right?
Planes will fly on. I don't know. Anyway, no, it's got survive that's a very strange question. You really need to understand all of the projections on renewables. None of them have suggested that energy transition means we're switching to renewables, because none of them can deliver. So even if you multiply them out, we still have an energy challenge. So oil will be here until a low-cost, high available solution happens. There are countries in this world who, we could all say, let's all go to, solar and wind, but it doesn't work for a lot of countries and a lot of technologies. So oil is going to be around for a long, long time. Now, mix is going to be interesting, and I personally want better invention. I'm not happy with the world's solutions on energy alternatives. So I think there's room, So I don't foresee it. Everyone's projections, doesn't matter who they are, they don't say oil goes away. That's a bit of a fantasy, but certainly the carbon footprint of oil will change big time. I think the impact of oil on the environment will change. We are very focused on that, and because the consumer wins, so the consumer wants all these things. They want to be able to travel around the world at low cost, and so people want these things, but they're starting to say, but I want it without impacting the environment, and that will change everything. I think our efficiencies are dealing with carbon capture. Those things will all change. But I don't think it's going away. I think that's. I would love, honestly, even though I get my living from oil and gas, I would love us to say, we found something better, and there's nothing is big enough or right enough yet.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So,
sorry, they're all rapidly long answers.
No, we love them. And so we see a lot of other great questions in here. We are running short on time, so we're just going to ask one more, a quick question. But for all those who asked, never fear. These are all really great topics that we can use for future shows. So definitely keep tuning in. We're going to get to as many of those in future episodes. But for the last one, so you mentioned a book, and Bill was wondering if you had the title or if that was something that is a book you wrote. You can say that. That's an answer as well.
That would be nice. I just walked off screen. Is that wrong?
We didn't mean to drive you away.
Oh, yeah.
That was too big a question. Here's the book. I give it out to everyone. So does that help? Take a screenshot. You'll be fine. I usually write notes in it because it's literally a picture and a statement. But I happy to talk to anyone about any of those theories. But I find them, particularly for the engineering mind, which is the foundation of our company. Thinking architecturally, I think, helps them to open up to the context of your work, and that's what I think is great about it.
Great, cool. Well, thanks, David. We've been talking with David Reid, NOV's Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Technology Officer, about what's happening in the world of energy today. Talked about the future. We talked about architecture and leadership. So if you've never met David, every conversation is a surprise convo in a box waiting to be opened. But I always enjoy it. So David, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us today. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Michael and Shelby. Great job. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to go back to Shelby and get the answer for our Rig Geeks post of the week. And as always, we'll go ahead and give that question again for those that maybe have an eye for historical black and white photography. Maybe they can spot it. I don't know. So what was the question?
Absolutely. So we have the question here, is we talked a little bit about how NOV got its roots back in 1862 with the oil well supply company. And so we wanted to know from our rig geeks if they could name the founder of the oil well supply company. And then for bonus points, if they could name the state within the USA where that took place. And I did actually see some right answers. So I was worried this one, going a little historical, that, people, it might be a little too crazy. But I should never doubt our rig geeks.
You should never doubt them. We've got the best viewers in the world. So I'm not surprised at all.
Absolutely. So the answer, and we also have an image we're going to show, like you mentioned, that black and white photography. That's really great. And the answer is the founder was John Eaton, and the state was in Pennsylvania. So we did see some right answers there. So yeah, here we have a picture, and this is kind of some of our favorite throwback photos are these ones that from the oil well supply company.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks, Shelby, and thanks again to David, and certainly to all of our viewers for joining us today. We always appreciate your comments, feedback, and conversation. So if there are things that we can talk about or profile on the show in future episodes, we are always open and willing to get your feedback. So feel free to put a comment here in the comment section. Again, you can always send us an email. That's socialmedia@nov.com. Or you can send us give us a call or drop us a voice memo on our comment line, and that number is +1 346 223 4799. So again, thank you for joining us, and from all of us here at NOV, thank you for watching and for listening, and we'll talk to you later.